Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It is Star Trek New Worlds. Thank you for joining us at this special time on Sunday at 11 o'clock. You're probably wondering why on earth, Tony, are you doing it on Sunday and not Saturday? I look forward to it on Saturdays. Well, unfortunately, due to the copious amounts of conflict that's going on in the turn, we had to push it by one day in order to get all those battles resolved. But what are we going to be talking about today? Today we're going to be going over a battle summary in Bravo 47. We're going to be talking about, yes, it's true, the Klingon collapse, the ramifications for the map, and you may just hear the odd salty tone from this here Klingon player. But with that said, you're probably wondering if it's your first time here. What is Star Trek New Worlds? It is a turn-based strategy game that we play here with you online. Today on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitch, we play it using the rule set of Federation and Empire as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau. And of course, the map that you will see here shortly is presented to you through the magic of Vassal. So that's the latest recap of what's going on. In about 2 seconds here, I will jump into the Galactic news and give you the highlights about what's going on. But let's just suffice it to say, we are in the short strokes of what maybe, I keep saying this, the end of the game. But with that said, let's roll into the Galactic news. They make a wasteland and call it war? The exhausted fleets of the Romulans and Klingons continue to ravage the space around their border. 2 Klingon bases inside Romulan territory were destroyed, along with the defending fleet, with terrific losses on both sides. In the north, a Klingon assault on the isolated base of Foxtrot 36, bases of Foxtrot 36, was pushed back by the last remaining ships possessed by the Romulans in that region. Some think that these two empires are on course for mutual annihilation. Rocks fall, everybody flees. The Tholians have struck back at the evading ISC and Romulan forces. At one of the 2 wormholes where the invasion is taking place, the combined Tholian fleet moved to engage and push back ISC and Romulan forces with over 100 ships on either side. We were expecting carnage on a galactic scale, but the invading forces chose discretion over valor and retreated back through the wormhole. There yet remains another large invasion force, and there is no guarantee that another invasion won't come back through the first. What we have here is a galactic game of whack-a-mole. Insult added to injury as the Romulan-Klingon war rages on. Both sides face economic exhaustion, and their fleets are largely in tatters. Adding to Klingon woes is an invasion by Gorn and Tholian forces through the Juliet 51 wormhole. A significant fleet transited and overcame a token resistance to set up shop inside Klingon space. This may be an existential crisis for the Klingons, as they have 2 new fresh enemies to contend with on top of their existing foe. Are the Gorn and Tholians here to enforce an end to the war, or to conquer? Raiders of the backyard, the Romulans, too, have a new foe with which to contend. Carnivon forces sallied forth from their wormhole in Romeo 39 to devastate northern Romulan space. Half a dozen space stations were destroyed and several resource points captured, cutting a large portion of Romulan space off from their homeworld. Was this a one-time strike, or are the Carnivons prepping for their own all-out war with their one-time co-belligerents? 8 lives remaining. The Lyrans also suffered an invasion as Gorn forces roared across the border and assaulted their homeworld system. Several light ships and a few bases were damaged before the Gorn called off their attack and withdrew back to their base. Some pundits claim that the Gorn are testing the resolve of the Lyrans. Others say this is a prelude to a full-out attempt to take out the Lyran homeworld. Is this last bastion of the Balkans besieged beyond its bounds? Ho-ho! Only time will tell. And that, my friends, is the Galactic News. All right. Let's slide right in here and just say a quick hello to all of our glorious, amazing folks that are in the chat right now. Bill is in the house, no doubt, drinking on that gloat Kool-Aid. Shields raised, wormhole breach, the greatest hive of villainy and evil in sight. Plasma's fire. George Fortnell is here. Hey, Bill, it's shaping up to be a big show today. Lots to cover. Come on, come one, come all. It's it's the greatest thing since pre-sliced bananas. Whoa, ladies and gentlemen, a coffee has been fired. Whoa, that was fast. For those of you who are new to the whole thing that is coffee, you can see there is a QR code between me and the chat. There is a link down below. You can head over there and join us with the coffee donations, if that's your style, helping keep us caffeinated and motivated through what will soon be the most distressing, depressing, and demoralizing Klingon turn that we have ever seen. Quick sip, here we go. Oh, that's hot. All right, Sunday's show, Tony, the OG, or is it AI? A little bit of one, a little bit of the other. What will we find? Is anyone at peace? Who will prevail? Who is next to fall? Well, I can tell you. This guy right here. Do we have a pew-pew? Oh, my doc, where art thou? And the Juggernauts, of course, have fired their coffee goodness just my way. Exciting and delighting. All right, let's dive into what's going on. It's going to be an exciting day. Let's jump into the map real quick, and I will give you a quick summary of the EP and fleet cap, then jump into the Battle of Bravo 47. We'll do a quick walkthrough so you can see exactly how that unfolded, and then we're going to talk about not one, not two, but the 3-team dog pile that needs to be that's going on right now in order to be able to knock out the Klingons. Oh, I am so flattered by the copious amount of attention. All right, with that said, let's jump into the map. Here we go. All right, so without getting too excited, here we go. Let's jump into the EP so you can see where everyone's sitting economically. The Carnivon are now ruling the roost at 61 EP. That's right, they are making some big gains. The Gorn, not to be outdone either, are at 80. 80. That's an all-time high for the Gorn. The ISC also growing their economy at a total of 70. The Klingons, unfortunately, are suffering a little shrinkage, more than a little. They are at 63.5. The Remans are 82.5, still the highest economy in the game, just by a smidge. The Romulans are at 54, the Tholians at 82, and wow, well, that puts us, the top 3 economies are within 3 points of each other, 82.5, 82, and 80 for the Gorn. Then we have, of course, the Klingons at 63.5, the Carnivon at 61, and the Romulans at 54. But let's talk about how big those fleets are. The fleets right now, Carnivon, are 115 total ships in circulation, 488 attack, 592 defense. The Gorn growing by leaps and bounds. They're at 168 total ships, 533 total attack, 762 defense. The ISC at 182 ships out and about. They are at 696 attack, 866 defense. The Klingons, now shrinking beyond all compare, are at 83 total ships, 261 attack, 316 defense. Their competition, the Romulans, are at 74 ships, really squeezing that margin, at 242 attack, 334 defense. The Remans, not to be left out, are at the second tier spot for total ships at 191, but still ruling the roost with total attack factor at 761 attack, 812 defense. But the Tholians have officially cracked 1,000 for their defense. They are at 214 total ships. Wow. And they have 705 attack, 1,021 defense. Wow. Right. Well, I've mentioned this more than once as we have progressed through this game, that the that the Tholians were the existential threat of the galaxy. That if we allowed them to get to in the late game, which we are currently, they would dominate because they were unmolested throughout almost the entire game. And what do we have now? That's exactly what we have. The Tholians are the second largest economy by half a point. They are the largest military. They are leaps and bounds ahead of everybody, and economically, from from their war turn capacity, they are probably in the best shape of anybody on the map. So, yeah, I think we're in an exciting spot for sure. But let's get down to brass tacks and talk about. Let's talk about the battle in Bravo 47. So let's zoom in here really quick, and you can see there is right here in Bravo 47, there is Third Legion and Home Fleet. These are Romulan fleets of a force that went in there to, shall we say, cause a little chaos. Yep, the Romulans and the Klingons had a big brouhaha in that hex, and I will show that to you here in just a moment. I'm going to slide over to this screen here. Just as while I do this, I'm going to load up, or paste up, shall I say, the list of Romulan and Klingon forces. So slide back real quick to this, whoop, and I will show you. In Bravo 47 this turn, the Romulans attacked the Klingons. What did the Romulans bring? Well, they brought themselves 4 of their dreadnought vultures, 2 of their command cruiser King Eagles. Whoa! Ladies and gentlemen, another coffee has been fired. I feel my whistle is needing a little wetness. Shall I take a sip? Yes, is the answer. Oh, that goodness gracious, awesome caffeinated goodness. Thank you for that second coffee of 3 that we're looking for today. Boom, boom, boom. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. All right. Romulan forces. We have 4 vultures, 2 King Eagles, which are command cruisers, 4 cruisers of the Queen Eagle variety, 5 destroyers of, they are the Battlehawks, 3 of their frigates, their improved frigates, the Snipe Bs, SMBMs, and then 1 Snipe A, along with a Pelican Eagle, bringing a little EW to the game, and 2 prime teams. What did the Klingons have to defend? Well, we had 2 bases. One had just finished completing a YBS, that is the TGB building the YBS, and a convoy had just begun building a second base. Why is that important? Well, of course, the base is in the hex to be able to provide supply, EW, but also the second base, now that it had been constructed based on the rules, even if the convoy was destroyed and there were no other forces or no other ships in the hex that could, quote-unquote, build a base, due to the fact that the base had already been begun, the base would then complete regardless. So there could have been, if this battle had gone the way of the Klingons, 2 YBSs in that hex at the end of this turn, potentially. That would have, of course, given us the opportunity to build 2 YDKs and have the repair capacity to be able to sally forth and continue our assault of the Romulan homeworld. But what was defending these bases under construction? It was 2 of my TGAMs. Those are tugs with 2 battle pods, making them 11, 12 ships, 11 attack, 12 defense each. That's a 22-24 total. The D7C is a command cruiser at a 9-9. D7M, their heavy cruiser at 8 attack, 7 defense. A T4, which is another tug. D6M, which is a straight 7 ship. 3 F5Ms, which are 4-4s. An E4M, which is a 4 attack, 3 defense. An E4S, which is 2 attack, 4 defense, and a scout. And 2 dagger teams. When you do the quick calculation, you will very quickly realize that the Klingons are outgunned. Not necessarily from a individual battle line perspective, but the overall defense factors that the Romulans bring to the game, they can just take a lot more hits, and of course they have a lot more ships. Let's do a quick count. 4, 6, 10, 15, 13, 18, 19, 20. 20 ships plus 2 prime teams. What did the Klingons have? 2, where are we here? Technically, we'll count the TGB. So 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12. 20 ships to 12 ships, and they have, the Romulans that is, a significant advantage in defense factors. Now, that the one thing the Klingons had on their to their advantage was the fact they had a YBS in play. The YBS can bring EW and it can soak a fair amount of damage. But let's jump into the battle report and let's see how that looks. All right, so you will notice here as I go from screen to screen to screen, we have the captions, the pictures of the notes written by our wonderful GM. You can see here as I look to the side, pardon my view, as I'm looking at it myself, we have the, there are a total of 10 battle rounds in this particular combat. In Bravo 47, the first battle round, we had a total burr of 3. Why is that important? At this point in the game, the Klingons have the ability to have 1 burr. Minimum burr of 1, which is a technology you just need to be able to research within the tech tree. Normally, without that technology, the minimum burr that you can have is 2. So, assuming that there was no variable burr in play here, basically the Romulans chose 2, the Klingons chose 1, and that gave us a burr of 3. You can see the Romulans had a total attack factor of 69, the Klingons 74. Rolling what they rolled, the Romulans ended up generating 14 attack factors, 14 damage, there we are, and the Klingons 22. Resolving that damage, the Romulans crippled and then killed one of their snipe A's. They crippled a Battlehawk, 2 Queen Eagles, and had 4 minus points remaining. The Klingons, resolving their 14 damage, basically resolved it in their chaff units. The YBS took a total of 8 damage, crippling it, and another 4 destroying it. The Convoy, with 6 defense factors in play, took that, leaving us with 4 minus points. So both sides dealing with 4 minus points as we go into round 2, where the burr is 5. You'll notice a theme here as the burrs stay low, with the Klingons trying to lengthen out the duration of this combat. You can see the Romulans have 68 total attack, the Klingons 70. With a 2 and a 5 rolled respectively, they now have 17 damage. The Romulans have inflicted 17 damage, the Klingons 23. Resolving the 23 with 4 minus points gets them to 19. They cripple and destroy a Snipe B. They cripple 2 Battlehawks, and they have 1 plus point remaining. The Klingons, resolving their 17 damage with 4 minus points, takes it down to 13. They kill an E4. Sorry, they cripple an E4 for 3, 2 F5Ms for 8, and 1 E4 dies for 2. So, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. Okay, going into battle round number 3. As you can see here, the burrs stay low. We have a burr of 3. And now you start to see the big impact of having more ships in the line than not. The Romulans maintain a 68 attack. They started with 69, then they went to 68, and now they're still at 68. The Klingons started at 74, fell to 70, and now down to 62. Just didn't have enough ammunition in the weapon, so to speak. The Romulans generate a total of 17 damage to the Klingons 12, and they get resolved this way. With a +1 point, the Romulans end up crippling and destroying a Snipe B, crippling a Battlehawk, and that's that. The Klingons, with 17 damage to resolve, end up crippling an F5, killing 3 F5s, and end up crippling a TGB with 8 defense. So that gives them -4 points, or 4 minus points, excuse me, going into the next battle round. In the 4th battle round, notice the continual fall of the attack factors for the Klingons. The Romulans can generate a total of 66, the Klingons 52. With the rolls of 4 and 4 each, that's 17 damage inflicted by the Romulans, 13 by the Klingons. Resolving their 13 damage, the Romulans cripple and then kill a Snipe N. They cripple a Battlehawk, cripple a QEM, and that leaves them with 5 minus points. The Klingons resolving their 17 with the -4 gets them down to 13 points, and they end up killing that TGB that was crippled last round. They end up crippling a D6 for 7, and then is that another D6? I guess the D6 destroyed for 4 with 2 minus points remaining. Well, that's just 4 battle rounds in. Now let's slide into battle round number 5. Again, 3 burr. The burr is staying very low during these attacks. You can see the Romulans have 63 total attack factors, still staying up there. The Klingons falling to 47. That's a third, more than a third less than when they started. They inflict 11 and 9 damage respectively. The Romulans resolving their 9 damage cripple a QEM. That's 7 points, leaving them with -3. The Klingons kill a D6 and they kill the D6 and they cripple a D7. D7 takes 7 damage with 2 minus points remaining. The D6 attempts to be rescued by the rescue tug. There was a T4 in that formation, if you remember. That T4 was attempting to rescue the D6, and generally speaking, the rescue roll is a no-brainer, except when you roll a 6, which is what was rolled. So unfortunately, the D6 gets lost. Curious to know, if the tug is unsuccessful in its rescue, then theoretically, should it not still be available for future rescuing? I don't know. We never sort of discussed that. I would be interested to look up that rule. I know, of course, that the rule exists, but if the rule is unsuccessful, does the tug still remain in the rescue tug slot? I don't know. We'll have to see. We are into round 6 of a total of 10. The burr has taken a jump up to 6. Obviously, the rolls for variable burr have gone in the favor of the Romulans. Now, with a total of 61 attack that they're generating, the Klingons down to 39. With the rolls the way they rolled, the Romulans just happened to roll the worst possible they could. Romulans generating 15 damage on the Klingons retaliating with 13, and we roll into the damage resolution. With their minus points, the Romulans take that down to 10, and they cripple 2 of their King Eagles, leaving them with 6 minus points. The Klingons, having to resolve a total of 15 with 2 minus points, takes it down to 13. They end up destroying a D7 and crippling a D7C. You can see where this is going. In the 7th battle round, look at that delta. The Romulans are able to generate a total of 57 attack. The Klingons only 31, and the rolls just didn't go our way. With 20 damage inflicted by the Romulans and only 7 by the Klingons, this is going to go one way and one way only. The Romulans end up resolving their 7 points with minus points with a 1 point plus remaining, a plus point. The Klingons, having to resolve 20 damage, end up having to kill their D7C, crippling one of their battle tugs with 3 plus points remaining. In the 8th, third last battle round, we have 57 attack generated by the Romulans, 23, less than half, by the Klingons. However, because the burr is so low at 4 and the rules just went the best way possible for the Klingons, rolling a 1 for the Roms and a 6 for the Klingons, it's an 11-7 damage resolution. The Romulans take their 7 damage and add their plus point, taking it up to 8. Means they have to destroy a total of 3 Battlehawks with a minus point remaining. The Klingons, having to resolve a total of 14 damage with the plus points, have to kill a battle tug and cripple another. This leaves them with 5 minus points going into the last 2 battle rounds. Here we go. In battle round number 9, the second last battle round, we have a total of 10 attack factor. That's what the Klingons can muster versus the 57 of the Romulans. The Romulans inflict 17. The Klingons only 3 points of damage. Enough to cripple a Battlehawk, but that's it. The Klingons have to destroy one of their battle tugs, and one of their T4s is crippled. Whew, this is bad. The last battle round has a total attack factor of 57 for the Romulans, 3 for the Klingons. You can see how this goes real quick. 1 point of damage inflicted by the Klingons against the Roms, 16 the other way around. The Klingons having to resolve the Romulans just resolved their 1 point of damage with the minus points. The Klingons having to basically be completely annihilated, destroying their D4, crippling an E4S, and destroying the E4S. The Klingons lost that fight. So when the whole thing was said and done, what happened? The Romulans crippled 2 King Eagles, 4 Queen Eagles, destroyed 4 Battlehawks, crippled 1, destroyed 3 Snipe Bs, and destroyed a Snipe A. The Klingons lost everything. So that means that essentially all the dreadnoughts, that those vultures that were in the formation, they all survived completely unscathed, meaning that the Romulans not only destroyed everything that the Klingons had, but they retained a significant combat effectiveness going into the next turn. And that's not the only thing. We'll jump into the map here in a second to be able to discuss what happens as a result of their various moves. But yeah, the Romulans were very effective this turn. All right, let's jump into the chat real quick. What did you think about that quick recap of what happened in the battle? Eugene is saying, if a tug is allocated to provide supply or build the YBS, it is available, or even is it available to even be a rescue tug? Or was there another tug available? There were many tugs in that hex, so the T4 in question, which was acting as a rescue tug, was not otherwise tasked with any other duty, hence its ability to be a rescue tug. Any tug that's in the hex that's either providing supply or building a base, acting like a base, has to be in the battle line, meaning that it can't be in one of the sort of back row items on a battle mat. In fact, I'll show you the battle mat here. Right here, as we slide in, I'll pull up the battle mat. Once my eyes can find it, it's right there. Boom, here we go. So this is an example. I'll actually use the one that's red and blue. There we are. So there's a battle mat. As you look at the battle mat, you can see in the very top and the very bottom there is the sort of the back line of auxiliary forces that are supporting. You've got a scout box here, places for pseudo fighters, drone bombardment with the DBs, rescue tug for the RT, and then a hospital ship in the H box there. So all of these ships also have formation bonus, but they are not effectively in the battle line. If you have a tug that is in the process of building something or is engaged in providing supply, it needs to be in one of these 10 boxes of the battle line, where the opponent, the attacker, the defender, usually the attacker in this case, can directly assault that particular unit. 9 times out of 10, you're going to put that in the formation bonus, the F box here, but it has to be in the battle line. So that's how that works. Basically, if your tug is engaged in another mission, it can't act as a rescue tug, which is why my TGAMs that had the battle pods had a different tug mission and could not operate as rescue tugs in that battle. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, sliding back into the chat. Here we are. Daniel, here we go. One tug was providing supply, the T4. Was it the T4? Okay. The TGB was free. Oh, there we go. So the TGB to be the rescue tug. So I had that backwards. Fireworks party. Game over, Bill says. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so let's talk about how game over-ish it is. Let's go right back to the map, and I will show you what the Romulans accomplished in their turn and how that sets us up, at least from the Klingon side, for existential collapse. All right, so we just went over the battle in Bravo 47. That was the big fight that happened here. Now, the Romulans had a bunch of other ships kind of floating around doing little things, and those 2 little things that they did, they sent one little ship over here because, unfortunately, I had all my ships concentrated on defending the base, which obviously ended up proving to be perhaps not the best choice. So Delta 48 here was taken by the Romulans. They had 2 Snipe A's that just kind of jumped on there and took it. And then they had a bunch of ships that were sort of congregated up here, and they moved here to be able to take this planet. So there's a total of 2 Battlehawks, a War Eagle in 7th Fleet, and a Snipe A. So these guys took this right here. Now, why is that important? Well, as I slide my head over, you will notice this hex right here is my capital. And if you do a quick count, you will see that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hexes from Nippon. Nippon is a planet, well, now devastated down to a colony. That was once a minor planet. Can you believe it? So down to a colony. But regardless, it's a point of supply right now for the Romulans. They're able to take supply from that colony, and they can assault onto my homeworld. They can move a total of 6 hexes, which means I'm completely within their operational movement. Now, I do have quite a bit of cripples here, and they can certainly act in defense of the capital. But if we look at the fact that they have 4 ships, and they will likely launch their attack on my capital, and since they're in supply, they can use their cloak to be able to avoid or get past any approach battle, which means we'll go straight into the system defense. Why is that important? Well, they're going to have 4 ships that they can coalesce into one specific fleet. I'm going to have the ships that are here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ships. Those 8 ships need to be divided equally among all 3. Well, first of all, they need to be divided equally into 2 groups. One of those 2 groups need to be spread across all the planets. The second group can then be, moved to respond to the attacks of the Romulans. Regardless of what happens, it's going to be a really bad dilemma for me as to how I'm going to resolve defending that homeworld. And certainly I'm going to lose ships in the process because those ships are going to get smacked. Smacked by ships that are in supply. Ships that are going to be able to retrograde back to that planet. Ships that are going to, if they don't completely wipe out what I have there, because again, this is a fatal flaw of the Klingon strategy. Because of my aggressive expansion and everything, look at the defenses I have in place. Practically nothing. So without a significant defensive force, without the ability to be able to turtle up and really hold people back in a siege kind of scenario, the Klingons are going to face some significant choices in this next turn, specifically with the Romulans. But I mentioned that this was an existential threat of a turn for the Klingons. Well, why is that? Well, if you've noticed, there's another color of red on the map. Yes, the Romulans are red and black, and they're certainly, again, surging across the border that we have with them. But there's another color, another combination of red. In fact, there's 2 of them. Red and white being the themes, red and white being the Tholians, and white and red being the Gorn. Both of those little sneaky buggers are down here, and they came through the wormhole. And you might be wondering, as was mentioned in the Galactic news, Tony, why didn't you fight? Why didn't you stop them? Why didn't you try and hold them back? I'll show you. The Tholians brought in First Fleet, which, as you can see here, is quite a significant number of ships. Let me illustrate for you exactly how much. In Vassal, one of the options that we have here is something called Compot. It's a table that shows you the different statistics or the information about any one particular fleet. Tholian First Fleet is listed right here. It is comprised of a total of 53 ships. It has a total attack factor, or total attack force combined, of 164. 164. By comparison, all the other fleets, essentially, that have been involved in any other combat with any other foe, from the Klingons, like dealing with the Romulans, or perhaps before dealing with the Gorn, none of my fleets have ever reached that number. I mean, I've had a lot of ships in a fleet, and I've certainly had over 100 attack factors, but 53 total ships, 164 total attack factor, and here's the kicker, 245 defense. We talked about the Tholians and their ability to do this thing called the pinwheel. When they do the pinwheel, and there's only certain ships that can do it, they're destroyers and patrol craft specifically. When they pinwheel, they take the total defense factors of those 3 ships and they increase it by 50%. So while it's not a perfect sort of calculation here, if you take a 245 and you times that by 1.5, you're going to get yourself, let's call it 250. So you're going to add yourself another 125 to that number. That's 300 and 300, in this case 370. 370 total defense factor effectively in a combat. Plus their 164 attack. They've got cruisers, so they've only, they can only bring 9 total ships. They have got an 8 command factor, so 8 ships plus the cruiser. So, I mean, they can only really bring 2 pinwheels and a collection of other ships. But nonetheless, it's pretty significant. And, of course, they've got scouts. That alone is enough at this point to be able to take out the Klingon Empire. 53 ships. Why is that a significant number? Well, if we take a second, and of course the Klingons will, because they have initiative, will be able to go before the Gorn and the Tholians. They are allied right now, so their economies, of course, individually are bigger than the Klingons, but if combined during an alliance turn, they're well above what the Klingons have. So while I can certainly go first and I can build stuff, I can't build 53 ships. I can't build enough ships to be able to even remotely contest that size of a fleet. Yes, I've got a lot of crippled ships around here, but there's only so much repair capacity that I have. And with the total number of ships that I have, I could pin them, but there's only so many ships I can pin. Crippled ships can't react, so the Tholians can walk around me. Let's do that real quick. Tholians, in their current hex, Juliet 51, can move a total of 6 hexes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ooh. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, no. So basically, they can go around on the southeasterly side. They can go around all my units and defenses, which are not insignificant in the sense that I've got, a number of bases here, and I've got ships on those bases. Now, granted, they're crippled, but, I'll be able to repair some of them. There is, to some degree, defensive forces ready to fight. They just can't fight 53 ships and 164 attack factor. But that's not the only thing. There's also the Gorn Fifth Fleet, which, to be fair, is sort of a token combination here. So the Gorn, by comparison, so Gorn Fifth Fleet, let's highlight these guys. They have 19 ships compared to the 53. They have 70 attack factor, which is certainly not insignificant. 91 defense. But to put that into context, the Tholians are twice as big combat effective-wise as the Gorn. They are more than twice as big defensively as the Gorn. They have almost 3 times as many ships. And, of course, combined, these guys have, 19 plus 50, what was the number, 57? No, 53. So 19 plus 53 ships is 63, 72 ships total. 72 ships. Their total attack factor combined is 234 and 336 defense, not taking into account the pinwheel stuff. Those two fleets combined have more unit numbers, total offensive and defensive firepower, than anything I could stop. And as a result, they are going to roll in there and take the capital. There is literally nothing that the Klingons can do to stop that from happening. The Tholians and the Gorn are both in supply because of bases that they have on the other side of the map. And I'll scroll over here so you can see that. So this is the wormhole. There is a planet here and a planet here that the Gorn are getting supply from. There is a base here that the Tholians are getting supply from. And regardless of their supply range, they certainly have 4, I expect 5 or 6, and they can get supply through the other side of that wormhole. Again, giving them the ability to go 6 hexes. the total distance that they need to go in order to get to the Klingon capital, which is up here. How did we get here? How do we get to a point where not less than 10 turns ago, the Klingons were the largest economy in the game, that they were arguably one of the most significant and influential military forces on the game, or in the game. They had the most advanced ships. They had dreadnoughts flying around, C6s. They had these battle tugs. They had all the stuff. How did we get here? Well, I can certainly play the blame game, but at the end of the day, this is a result of everything, of all sorts of mistakes that the Klingons made. If you recall, and if you've watched previous episodes, you will remember that there was this whole brouhaha that the Klingons got into around this hotel wormhole. The Klingons had taken the Balkans, or at least the former Federation part of the Balkans. They had access to the other side of that hotel wormhole, and in order to sort of defend it, I went through and built a base here, or was building a base here. But instead of just going through the wormhole and building a base and playing, kumbaya and peacefully with the Roms and the Gorn, instead of doing that, I went through the wormhole and started picking a fight with the Gorn. Now, why was I doing that at that time? What was going on? Oh, yeah. The Gorn and the Carnarvon were pissy with each other, and there was this wormhole, the Juliet wormhole, that was opening up on the Carnarvon capital. Why is the Klingon trying to pick a fight with the Gorn? Well, again, this is all in the mission statement, which at the beginning of the game, I think I conveyed it to you as an audience, if not the other players. My goal for the game was to do anything and everything in my power to prevent the Tholians from winning. The Tholian player is a very experienced player. He has played a number of these games, ones that we haven't necessarily broadcast in the past, and in every single game, he has effectively won. One of the reasons why he effectively wins is because for some reason he conveys or intimidates other players to the point where, not actively, just by the nature of his persona, intimidates other players. Other players are hesitant to pick a fight with him. And as a result, what ends up happening is this player proceeds through the majority of a game without being challenged until such time that they're at a point, such as now, where they've had a long period of the game being unprovoked, unmolested, uninterrupted in their ability to build out a strong power base. In this case, strong economics and a large military fleet, which they are now using to great effect. You compare that with every other faction in this game, well, maybe with the exception of the Gorn. The Gorn have been rather sheltered throughout this game, but certainly the Carnarvon have had their share of turbulence. The Klingons and the Romulans have gone at it more than once. The Remans and the ISC still working off war turns effectively from their annihilation of the Hydrons. And, of course, the Lyran and Federation player left due to the challenges of the conflicts they faced. Out of all those players, the only player that effectively hadn't engaged in any significant conflict, any prolonged back and forth with another player, was the Tholians and the Gorn. So effectively, we're looking at two players who have spent the majority of their game without any significant challenge or conflict. Granted, the Gorn have picked a fight here or there. They're a little less sort of white and pure in this, but the Tholians certainly have not had any significant challenges. And what's particularly interesting about these two factions is that the Gorn and the Tholians, when you just do sort of a meta-analysis, or you look at the sort of the macro of those two factions, their ships and the progression of their technology over time, they start off very weak. I mean, everyone starts off weak, but in the W and the Y eras, their ships are not very capable. They don't have a lot of offensive firepower. It is challenging for them to get a foothold. And ironically, because they were such They were such an insignificant threat back then. No one considered them a threat throughout the game, and they were able to grow unabated the entire game. So this guy, unfortunately, in the position that I had, was looking for any opportunity to try and engage and challenge the Tholians. The Gorn at that time, this is going back like 10 turns or more, since this is now the 13th turn of war with the Romulans. So going back maybe 15 turns, looking at the dynamic, the Gorn were working closely with the Tholians. Absolutely understandable. They are neighbors, and the Tholians were getting big, and the Gorn were looking to get bigger. And so looking at all the criteria and the dynamics, it made total sense for the Gorn and the Tholian to work together. So they were. From the Klingon perspective, if my objective is to be able to take the Tholians out, and at the time, the Carnivons and the Gorns were going at it, it made sense that the Klingons could support the Carnivon, which at that time were an ally, to be able to stir the pot, make things happen, and get things going. Here's the challenge as that went forward. First of all, that was a dumb move. The Klingons should not have stirred that pot, should not have tried to be provocative, should not have tried to pick a fight with the Gorn. That was, in hindsight, and even in the moment, stupid. Just dumb. Why did I do it? It's all about the clicks. I was trying to create excitement for the game, for the show, and so on, and so I was looking to be aggressive. That was an idiotic move and put me in a terrible situation. Why? Because by doing that and being overly aggressive the way I was, I provoked and pushed the Romulans and the Gorn to make a decision to attack me. They were happy to let me be, for all intents and purposes. I was copacetic with the Romulans. There was no major disruption or issue at that point. It was, I would argue, specifically my injection into that free transit zone area by the hotel wormhole that really moved the needle. And then at that point, it became just a matter of time before the Romulans set themselves up and with the Gorn support to be able to get me. And it made total sense. The Romulans, if they executed well, and boy, did they, could really push the needle with me, like in a very, very significant way. The Gorn, as they have demonstrated, used the opportunity to be able to either A, fight the Carnivon, which they did, and or two, get into the Balkans, which they have. So they have accomplished a significant economic victory. Strategically, they've put themselves in a much better position. They've allied themselves with arguably the strongest military force in the game, and certainly one with close proximity to them. So as far as this game goes, the Gorn have made strategic choices that are excellent. The Tholians have been the sort of the wagon to hitch to, and worked collaboratively with their neighbors, i.e. the Romulans, excuse me, my nose is itchy, to be able to get the outcome that they're looking for. And of course, they had the benefit of having an idiot as their opponent, i.e. me. So, the Klingons made a major error and mistake. They initiated their activity in the free transit zone, first of all, being aggressive and hostile, stupid, but also, in hindsight, there had been a recognition that the Tholians and this whole thing was going to be an issue with the rest of the allies in the Four Powers Alliance, which is the ISC, the Remans, and the Carnivon. However, the Carnivon and the ISC had been very, 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 can I say any more varies? Clear about their timeline and what they needed. And this guy, second major mistake, ignored it. Based on doing what I needed to do for the gram or the attention when it came to the channel, and of course just being, from a role-playing perspective, the over-aggressive Klingon-type player, I picked a fight ahead of schedule. I put myself and I overextended. I provoked potential allies to become definite opponents. And so The Klingons, again, it's itchy nose, excuse me. The Klingons created a set of circumstances whereby they created opportunity for their neighbors to become allies in alliance against the Klingons. And of course, without being attentive to the sneaky maneuvers, again, very well executed by the Romulan player, created a scenario where they were able to flood across the border, and away we go. However, even at that point, this was not something that could be unrecoverable. The Klingons were fighting the Romulans, and it was going to be a all-out slugfest, and that's fine. But I would say there are two specific influencing factors that have led us to here now, even ahead of those other things. One, at the time when the initial Romulan assault started, the Klingons had a large fleet in the Balkans. Why? The fleet in the Balkans was a deterrent against the Tholians, because at that time the Tholians were still not huge. And there was a lot of good, powerful cruiser type ships in and around the area that could effectively hold back the Tholians. And the Gorn weren't in there yet. As a result, that fleet, that large military force, was tied down in the Balkans until much later, when I eventually pulled them out of there to be able to help with the attack against the Romulans. In hindsight, I should have just done it sooner. I should have just pulled them back ASAP, get them back into the fight with the Romulans, and go. That would have allowed for a speedier execution, a more substantive pushback against the Romulans at that time. But unfortunately, that was a decision I didn't make. Hindsight's 2020. Who knows? We would have had all sorts of different things had that occurred. Tholians probably would have surged into the Balkans regardless, and at that point just taken up more space, and I would have been in a bad spot regardless. But with the threat that the Romulans were presenting, it made more sense in hindsight to be able to pull that fleet out sooner than when I did. So that's one thing. Second thing, and this is the part where you don't know until you know. The interaction of players in this game is all about, well, the alliances and various other things, and how different players conduct themselves is not something that any one player can control. I can't control other players, they can't control me, and so on and so forth. For example, Klingons were a terrible ally for all intents and purposes because we picked fights when the fights didn't need to be picked. Okay. Once the fight was picked and it was up and running, the Klingons needed their allies to commit to the fight. And unfortunately, when you have one side that is aligned, committed, and working well together with good communication and coordination and all being on the same page, versus an alliance where there is miscommunication, misalignment, and not everyone being on the same page, that can cause a problem. By example, when the initial fight was started, the Carnivon were fighting the Gorn. The Klingons were fighting the Romulans. And that's fine, because that's where the conflict was localized. But then there was a stage in the war where the Carnivon went to peace. That took the heat and attention off of the Gorn and the Romulans, redirecting it against the only other faction in the war, which was the Klingons. After that point, the Gorn were able to redirect their energy and effort to go through the hotel wormhole and take the Balkans. The Romulans were able to no longer pay attention to the Carnivon and attack the Klingons with everything they had. The ISC and the Remans had been very clear about their timeline and weren't willing to commit to a war yet. And so now we're in a position where there has been this start and stop kind of interaction with the Carnivon. Carnivon had gotten back into the fight, which is excellent. And to be fair, it is to their huge economic advantage that they've done it the way they've done it. There's lots of vested interests, or for example, I'm explaining all this from the Klingon perspective. it would be great if all my allies would just do what I tell them to do and just, commit 100%. But that doesn't take into account the fact that each player is playing their game. They want to win. They don't necessarily care about you. They just want to be successful themselves. If that means working with you to be mutually successful, great. But if it's all about me, no one wants to be part of that conversation. So the Carnivon, making decisions for themselves, they decided to go to peace when they did for very valid reasons. And to be honest, their choice to get involved in the fight at this point makes total sense, in the sense of they have allowed the Klingons to be able to wear down the Romulans to a point where they are easy and very vulnerable to take at this point. The economic gains the Carnivons are making are going to be excellent. And maybe this is a short-term war and it's just a quick resource grab and they go back to peace. Who knows? Will the Carnivon attack the Gorn? Maybe, maybe not. We've talked about in the headline news how the Gorn have attacked the Lyran pocket, and the other factions there haven't gotten involved. The Carnivon aren't really worried about the Lyrans or not getting involved with the Lyrans. The Remans have been sitting on the sidelines. The Remans and the ISC are focused right now on their attacks into into Tholian space, which are at the moment facing some headwinds. There are some very significant things that are happening there. And the Tholian player is a very good player. He is going to make it very difficult to fight that fight. So it's not just, it's not going to be super easy. The fact that the ISC were as successful as they were over the past 2 turns, taking out 24 bases, is phenomenal. As I mentioned in a chat earlier, I said that the ISC took the game plan that I executed against the Carnivon earlier in the game, and they one-upped me. They took my same tactics and strategy and executed it better than I did, which is phenomenal. Phenomenal. So the ISC have done a great job at doing what they've done. They've got some support from the Remans. And there's been a little bit of a back and forth there. However, let's be fair. The Tholian player is, he is as good as he is for a reason, and he will continue to do an excellent job in defending. Yeah, he took some hits and casualties, but that's to be expected to a certain degree. You expect a certain degree of loss overall. So. Here, I've been talking like crazy. Let me jump into the chat, and then I will quickly recap. All right, so let's jump into the chat here. What we got? Bill, don't forget battleships. Yeah, someone seems to be wearing rose-spaced helmet visor, Bill says, and the Romulans. Thank you, Tony. Well, looking at it like you're saying, Tony. Oh, my goodness. So hard sometimes to read these chat messages. Well, looking at it like you're saying, Tony, the Carnivon could pick up 10 EPs right quick and in a hurry. Yes, absolutely. The Carnivons are going to do an excellent job, I think, in the coming turns, if only because the Romulans, with their commitment against me, are going to be totally out of position, and the Carnivon are going to clean house. I will share... this is sort of like behind the scenes, but I'm going to share with you something critical that happened this last turn that goes with our title, Collapse. That was not intentional by my opponents, but they did something that was a cumulative effect that had tremendous impact. Okay, so what am I talking about? In this game, you can operate at a deficit, meaning that you make 50 EP, you can spend 99 EP. You can spend as much, you can go into the red as much as you like. However, if for whatever reason, once your turn comes and you earn your money, if at the end of your income, if your net balance is negative in any way, you can't spend anything. You can't spend $1 on repair, building, research anything. If your net balance is negative, not zero, but negative after your income has been resolved, you can't spend $1. And in this last turn, the Klingons suffered an economic collapse. The balance was not even -1. It was negative decimal something, but it was negative. And because of that, the Klingons couldn't spend anything. The Klingons couldn't build a single ship. They couldn't repair a single hull. They couldn't do anything. And that had huge ramifications. The fleet that came through, granted, they're big, but the fleet that came through theoretically could have been stopped or at least dramatically crippled by a Klingon fleet in that hex. If the Klingons had been able to build this turn, like the path turn that just happened, I would have been able to build a C6, which is a dreadnought. I would have been able to build a full build of destroyers and frigates, and I would have been able to repair a number of ships that would have been able to be in that hex when those ships came through. I did the math. I would have had over 20 ships in that hex, and the combat effectiveness in each battle round would have been enough to either destroy or cripple all the major ships from those factions. Would it have stopped the inevitable collapse of the Klingon Empire? Maybe, maybe not. But it would have been a much bloodier and more painful encounter. What ended up happening instead? The Klingons couldn't spend $1. No Orions, no support, nothing. So that token defense force, they were in the hex just to stop the ships from coming through and then had to retreat because there are a bunch of obsolete ships and they couldn't fight that fight. The reason why the Klingons were in deficit was specifically and solely because the Klingons had been fighting this protracted and prolonged war with the Roms. In the very early start of the war, I was overbuilding like crazy. Overbuilding is when, for example, you have one cruiser slipway per season. So there's in this game, the year is broken into the first half of the year and the second half of the year. The fall and winter, and the spring and summer. In each of those seasons, you can have a single cruiser. Well, you can have a total of 2 cruiser slipways. Each cruiser slipway builds in one of those seasons. The destroyer and the frigate slipways can build in both. So if you have 3 and 3, you can build a total of 6 hulls in fall, winter, or spring, summer, regardless. But basically, with the hull and the slipways that I had, I basically could build 7 ships a turn. But when you overbuild, you pay twice the price for the hull, and you can build more of them. So, for example, I was building a weird combination of these F5Cs, which are these 5 attack, 6 defense ships, during my normal build cycle, and I would overbuild the cheaper ships, the F4s and the E4Ms, to be able to get more ships out on the line. That effectively meant that I could with everything that was going on, I could overbuild, and the way I was building ships, I was producing around 10 hulls a turn. And that was a huge advantage initially with the Romulans, because the Romulans had this, they had the advantage of having ships in place, and I didn't. I was out of position, and it was only by overbuilding that I was able to get ships into position and get ships on the line. But I was sacrificing a lot of ships because he destroyed a lot of my repair capacity, like the bases and so on. And so I was spending a ton of money in the early part of the war just to be at parity with the Roms. And because I spent all that money and I got into this huge deficit, and then you start hitting war exhaustion, the first phase of war exhaustion is 75%, not 100% of your income. And so when that starts to kick in, just the amount of money you have to spend is less and less and less and less. And so now you're at a point, or at least the Klingons are at a point, where because we're consistently losing resources and the overall income is less and everything else, there is not enough capacity to be able to build ships, get stuff out on the front line, repair what's there and everything to be able to fight this fight. If I was just fighting the Romulans, yeah, that's a fight that I could fight all day. And maybe we would just slug it out and blood each other's noses until we're blue in the face. But I legitimately thought that the Klingons could win that fight. And arguably, if it wasn't for certain circumstances, I think we would have. In fact, we could have won already. Except that we have 3 factions ganging up on the Klingons. We have the Tholians, strongest faction in the game right now. The Gorn, 3rd strongest faction in the game. And the Romulans. All ganging up on the Klingons. The Klingons are in a position where their allies are not communicating well and seemingly are uncoordinated in their activities. Whereas the Romulan-Gorn-Tholian alliance is working very well together and as a result are winning. The Gorn-Romulan-Tholian alliance is coordinating their attacks on a single target, the Klingons, and they are about to be successful in doing that. They will eliminate the Klingons next turn. There's nothing I can do about that. Literally, there's nothing that can change that outcome, assuming that's what they want to do. And if they do that, this is my forecast for the rest of the game. Once whoever it is, whether it's the Tholians or the Gorn or somehow the Romulans, or somehow they slice it up and purse it up, once they take the Klingon area, and keeping in mind that the majority of the Klingon resources are in the south, right by that wormhole, once they do that and they take up that space, those 3 factions are going to be in a very unique situation. The Romulans will have no other threat other than the Carnivon. The Gorn won't have any other threat other than the Carnivon. And the Tholians will be dealing with the IC and the Remans. If I'm the Gorn and the Romulans and working on the current strategy that they are working on, they will most likely pick a single target to take out. And out of those 3 remaining factions, the ISC, the Reman, and the Carnivon, who do you think is the easiest target to take? Think about it. The Gorn and the Roms are going to take it. And maybe the Carnivon switch sides. Maybe that's possible. If the Carnivon switch sides and it's all of them versus the IC and the Remans and the IC have done an excellent job in their initial assault. However, there's no way that even they can hold off 4 different factions. They can't hold off the Carnivon, the Romulans, the Gorn, and the Tholians all by themselves. They could maybe go toe-to-toe with the Gorn and the Tholian. And maybe the Carnivon and the Romulans go toe-to-toe with each other. But I don't know. It's a tough. So where are we at now? We're at now in a point in the game where, due to the self-inflicted injuries that the Klingons have done to themselves, and due to some, and this is normal in life and certainly in politics, shall we say, a lack of cohesion with the Allies, there's been some errors that have been made. Strategic errors, in the sense that the outcomes that those errors have resulted in are not the desired outcomes of the alliance. So as a result, the Klingons are about to fall. It will be most likely that some other faction will fall shortly thereafter, whether it's one of the Tholians, Romulan, or Gorn, or whether it's, for example, the Carnivon being the smaller of the other 3 that are remaining in the 4 Powers Alliance. One of those other factions will fall. And that will, and because of the late stage of the game, and I don't know where everyone is when it comes to war turns, but I would expect that the ISC and the Remans are high up there. The Tholians may be, the Gorn certainly are, and the Romulans are, if not at exhaustion, they pretty much are. If they're not in exhaustion now, they will be they will be next turn kind of thing. Because this war with the Romulans has been going on 13 turns. And they had war turns prior to that. So I would say it's good. They got to at least be at turn 17 at a minimum. So yeah, there's going to be an interesting outcome going forward. The Klingons will most likely take a step back here in a moment because we'll be taken out of the game. However, I will do my best to be an irritant as we go forward. Not necessarily a spoiler in that sense, but I will try and preserve as many ships as I can to remain in the game in some way, shape, or form, to provide a balance, something to be able to create some dynamic in the game that will potentially, hopefully, cause some intrigue. We'll see. But as I mentioned, late stage of the game, it certainly is for the Klingons. Will it be for the rest of the factions? I don't know. We'll have to see. With that said, let's go back into, let's see. So Bill and George saying, so Bill, from you, the Klingons. And George Fortnell says, thumbs up. Okay, yeah. Hopefully this has been entertaining. Has it been good as far as the description and the battle summary? What else would you like to see? As we're as the Klingons get eliminated from this game, there'll be a little bit less workload from the turn management piece. I think we'll be starting to work on what the next game might look like. Granted, this game could still continue for quite some time. After all, the Hydrons were eliminated, what was it, like a year ago at this point? And so the game could still go on for maybe a year, depending. But nonetheless, start brainstorming and thinking and working with the rest of the players to come up with ways to be able to make things better, either for the next game or maybe even streamline elements of this game as we're continuing to play. So with that said, what do you think? Add your comments below. And if you've lasted this long, then please dethrone Dr. Death 43 as the latest subscriber. Hit that button and subscribe to New Worlds, and you'll be able to see the latest and greatest as this evolves. Will you catch the fall of the Klingon Empire when it happens? Will you see the thriving of the Tholians, or perhaps the ravaging of the Tholians by the Romulans and the ISC, or maybe just the complete crushing and gnarling up of the Gorn? I'm trying to get my alliteration in there. We'll see. Anyways, with that said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will see you next week right here, Star Trek New Worlds. Ciao for now.